Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for being here for Deborah Kobylt Live. Oh boy, do I have an interesting guest for you on the phone. Jill Hasday from the law professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You wrote this terrific book, Intimate Lies and the Law. Please, people, pick this up. If you've ever been duped, if you've ever been duped by someone who was not telling you the truth, you've got to read this book. What are your rights? You gave me so many examples, and there's many, many examples from the book, and I just want to get right to it. Why did you write this? How did you even get the idea to write this book?
Well, as I say in the dedication, this book was not inspired by my own family life. I've been a family law professor for 20 years, and occasionally I would come across stories where an intimate, meaning just a date, a sexual partner, a spouse, or a family member, deceived the people in his life and got away with it because courts said they wouldn't give a remedy when it was a deceptive intimate as opposed to a stranger deceiving you. And I
Okay.
always thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to go back to it.
Yep. And we all know people who've been deceived big time. Let's talk about a few of them. About the person who made a friend on the internet. This one blew me away. There's a couple of them that really stood out to me. This one in particular, what happened? The woman's name was Paula, I believe.
Okay, so this woman, Paula Bonham, she connects with this man on an internet chat room. And over the course of almost 2 years, they exchange endless phone calls, emails, texts, packages. She sends him more than $10,000 in gifts. And he also puts her through the emotional ringer. He tells her he's tried to commit suicide, he's dying of liver cancer. Well, you know how the story ends because it's in my book. It turns out she contends he doesn't exist. He's a fake persona, she says, invented by a woman named Jana St. James to manipulate her emotionally and financially.
Let's talk about that again. This man didn't exist. It was a
Didn't exist.
woman by the name
It
of
was a woman,
Janet.
Jana St. James. She contends. This is her allegations.
Right.
And she says, you invented this persona to manipulate me, both to get the money, but also to manipulate me emotionally. In addition to the endless messages she was exchanging with this fake persona, she was getting emails from all these other people supposedly in the man's life, like his son and his ex-wife and his friends and his sister. It was this whole drama she was enmeshed in. And so she eventually discovers the man doesn't exist, and she sues in Illinois for fraudulent misrepresentation. And that's basically a claim that you can bring, and your allegations are the defendant lied to me. She wanted me to rely on her lies. I did rely, and I suffered damages.
And what
And
did
the
the
Illinois
courts what did the courts say?
Okay, so the Illinois Supreme Court says, yes, your allegations seem to meet all the criteria, but you can't sue because you were suing an intimate rather than a stranger. So there's at least two things here that I think are really interesting. First is the court's assumption, which you see again and again, that people deceived by an intimate can't sue, can't access the ordinary remedies they would have if they were deceived by a stranger. But second, I think this case is so interesting because it shows you how broadly courts define intimacy. Paula and Jana didn't meet until just before the deception was revealed. How could they? The whole thing depended on avoiding face-to-face contact. But the court nonetheless says you're intimates, and so you can't sue.
So, but wait a minute. How did she even disguise her voice to sound like a man? I mean, I don't think
She
I'd get
used
away with
she
it.
used a machine. She used a voice altering machine. I mean, this woman was all
Oh,
in.
I wonder how
Yeah.
many others that she was deceiving. How disgusting.
The, according to the plaintiff's allegations, this wasn't her first time doing this. This was something that she enjoyed doing.
People amaze me. What about the one with the husband and the kidney?
Oh, the kid. Okay, so
I tell you, it just
this
amazes me
woman,
that people can even think this way.
yeah,
Oh my God.
as I told you when we were talking earlier, in the beginning when I started this book, things would surprise me. I would think this person has a secret second family. How could that be? But now nothing surprises me. But this case is a little unusual. So a woman is engaged to this man, and he's ill, and he needs a new kidney, and he's having a terrible time finding a match, a donor. And it turns out that the woman's brother is a match. And he feels like his sister loves this man. The man is a little wealthier than the sister. She's just going to have an easier life. They're going to basically live happily ever after. So the brother gives the kidney, and then the plan is, he's going to recover from the kidney surgery, and then they're going to get married. As she's driving him out of the parking lot from the hospital with, the brother's kidney inside, he tells her, "I want to postpone the wedding." And he ends up marrying someone else within a year.
I would have killed him. I really would have, and I would have taken my kidney back. I would have, and I would have taken my kidney back. I can't believe it.
Okay, actually, one of the reasons I think the law should help people is in part to dissuade them from taking matters into their own hands.
Yeah.
I would have killed him strategy.
No.
So I actually talk about that in the book.
No, I'm actually being dramatic. I wouldn't have done that, but I'm just saying. Could you imagine? Good. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. So she sues, the jilted woman sues, and her brother sues. I wouldn't have done this. And the court says no remedy because you're just suing. Basically, if you were ever engaged to someone and didn't get married, the court won't allow you to sue about anything, even if it's not about the broken engagement per se. Like here, the brother is not suing, but it's not so much you decided not to marry me, it's that you tricked me into giving me your kidney. But courts won't let you have a remedy.
Yes, of course. I mean, doesn't it depend often too on the judge? Because if I were a judge sitting across from these people, I would have absolutely slapped I don't know, fraud. I mean, clearly there was intent to commit fraud, especially because he broke up with her as they're driving out of the hospital. Gosh, you could have waited a month. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, what's interesting is I don't want to say every deceived intimate is denied a remedy, but it's remarkably routine across jurisdictions and across states that people are denied a remedy.
Why? Why is that, you think?
I think it's interesting. Courts often treat it as just common sense. Of course we wouldn't give a remedy. Sometimes they invoke the idea of, well, we don't want to intervene in intimate relationships. Personally, I don't find that argument very convincing because courts are setting the ground rules for intimate relationships. They're deciding who can do what to whom. They're just doing it in a way that protects deceivers. Some courts go so far as to say, well, if we didn't allow people to lie, especially lie to get someone to have sex with you, the human race would disappear. Like heterosexual mating depends on deceit, which I don't accept as a empirical proposition. But courts just take it as common sense. That's one of the reasons I found the book so interesting to write is that, like you, I don't share the sense that this should be protected because it causes so much injury.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, because then it also opens the doors for people to be deceptive because they know they're going to get away with it.
Right. I mean, I think that one of the I'm not saying that everyone is aware of exactly what the law would do, but to the extent you're aware, the law creates incentives to deceive because you can capture tremendous benefits by deceiving, and the odds that you'll be held accountable in court are low.
Wow. When we were talking earlier, you also said, but still, it's important that we trust people. However, you do need to use your instincts a little bit. I would never say that what these people did was wrong. It wasn't. Giving your kidney, that's a very generous and kind thing to do to a fellow human being. But, perhaps if you were to use your instinct, you would say, you know what, I want to wait till I'm married 5 years, or I don't know, maybe he didn't have the time to, I don't know. Who am I to judge? Yeah.
One of the messages of the book is that I think courts and commentators are too quick to blame people for being deceived. And you can see why. Mm-hmm. It's very comforting to think that only the particularly stupid and gullible fall for it because we're, of course, so clever and savvy, and that means we're safe.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
Also, in retrospect, things seem more obvious. Of course we know he's a fraudster, but at the time, it doesn't seem like that. At the time, it seems like he's a loving fiancé who's also very ill, But, so I'm not I don't think people should blame themselves.
No.
If you have been deceived, you're not alone. It's not your fault. That said, the book, as part of researching this book, I also read dozens of manuals written by and for private detectives and skip tracers, and I have tips for how to use the existing public records. I think you should also, the time to honor your intuitions that something isn't right is at the beginning rather than the end. when you're already trapped. And there's certain things that I think are very per se suspicious. So I'll give you a tip. If you're on a first date and the man or the woman reveals herself to be a CIA agent, they're not a CIA agent. You know, people who are actually in the CIA don't talk about it. Deceivers love to claim glamorous jobs like being a CIA agent because that also sets them up for explaining why they're going to be away from you so often.
Good point.
Similarly,
Wow.
if someone claims to be a Navy SEAL, at any given moment there are more men falsely claiming to be Navy SEALs than have ever served in the Navy SEALs. So, of course, you don't want to. Some people have served in the Navy SEALs. You know, you don't want to assume the person is a liar, but just
Get to know
have that.
somebody. Get to know somebody. And
Get to know someone. One of the women I talk about in the book, because not only do I talk about cases, but there's a lot of interviews I talk about and memoirs. One woman had met two men who falsely claimed to be unmarried when they're actually married, and she said her new strategy is if she doesn't meet their friends, their associates, their family members in the first few weeks, she's not continuing the relationship. And I think that is
that's
a good
great.
strategy. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, you can't do that strategy in secret. You have to tell the person they may not be interested in introducing you to their mother on date 2. So there's a cost there, but I think that's a perfectly reasonable strategy if you want to adopt it.
Also, you can look up anyone online and, hopefully find out if they've had a marriage or not. I mean, gosh, I don't know. I've been married so
It's
long, I don't even
harder.
know the rules anymore. But I guess
I
I
mean,
would do that if I just met somebody, right?
it's harder than you think
Really?
because a lot of public records aren't necessarily online, and if they're online, they're not coordinated. So
Hmm.
one of my suggestions in the book actually is that states should coordinate their public records on marriages and divorces and bigamy convictions. Because you could look up in my town is there a marriage record, but that doesn't mean they're not married. They could have just married somewhere else. So the
I
public
didn't
records
realize
aren't.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not as we think now that there's the internet. Everything is at our fingertips. Even criminal records. If you're an ordinary person, you're not the police looking. It's not so easy to confirm someone's criminal. They haven't been arrested for a crime in any jurisdiction, anywhere in the United States. So it's not so easy. That said, there are things you can do. I think we generally have norms against investigation that we should trust, and I think those are good norms. Like, it would be terrible if when someone says they love you, your first reaction is, you must be lying, I'm going to hire a private detective. I mean, that would be horrible. But that said, I think some people who have read my book have concluded, they're going to be a little more investigatory, and someone deciding they're going to see what they can find out early rather than later, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
It is a
Um,
fascinating book. It's well researched, well documented. That's the thing about the book. And you kind of can't put it down. You just keep flipping through, going, I can't believe this. Let's go through one more, maybe, or maybe one or two more. The man who was arrested for attempted rape,
the rape. Okay,
a
so
married guy. He's married.
they're married, a married couple. He's arrested for attempted rape. He tells his wife, "I'm innocent. Help me. I'm about to go to jail." Wrongly. They spend some marital money. She also spends some of her own money. She gets a gift from her father to help. In all, they spent about $15,000 on his defense. He's convicted, but that's good news because a year later he confesses he's guilty. About a year later, the divorce proceedings go on, and she says, "I want to be compensated for the money I spent on his defense. If he hadn't lied to me, I wouldn't have spent that money." So basically, like, that shouldn't come out of. We shouldn't split that in half. Like, that expense should all be attributed to him. And the court says no, because that expense was during an ongoing marriage.
I know, but it was through deceit. I mean, I don't understand what the courts are saying. It's very subjective sometimes with these judges. Am I right?
Yeah. So one line, it doesn't explain all the cases, but explains a lot of the cases, is if the court is convinced your marriage is irretrievably over, they'll give you a remedy. So if someone decides, I'm divorcing her, and they go to the bank and they clear out the bank account, usually courts will undo that because it's kind of a fraud on the court. We're supposed to divide the assets, not you. But many courts, if they're convinced that the marriage was still ongoing, will not dive into financial deception during the relationship. Even though, why is the marriage ongoing? In this case, it's clearly because of the deceit. If he had confessed the attempted rape, presumably the marriage would have ended at that moment, right? So it keeps going because of the deceit, and then the court uses the fact that the marriage kept going as a reason not to give remedies. So it's also striking because generally the kinds of harms the law cares most about is money. It's easiest for the courts to understand. There's already a dollar sign on it. But even with financial deception in marriage, courts are often reluctant to give a remedy.
Is this sort of sometimes a sexist thing that, they're not voting or not in favor of the woman? Because it seems to me like a lot of these women are getting duped. I know that men get duped too, but there's many, many more stories of women getting duped. I mean, what about the woman who was dating a man? Oh my God. And she wanted to have a child, and she found out that he had a vasectomy, that he wasn't even capable.
He concealed his vasectomy to get her to have sex with him. Yeah, so
Ugh.
I looked quite a bit to try to find, I think we have an assumption that women are more likely to be deceived than men. And there's no conclusive evidence where you could say that. So clearly, I mean, one of the punchlines of the book is all sorts of people deceive everyone, are deceiving all the time.
Very true.
In the case law, there does seem to be more women suing men, but that could be in part because it's more culturally accepted for women to sue about, bad men's behavior than the reverse. I do think gender does play into the court's decision. So when courts say, especially in cases where a woman is saying, you duped me into having sex, if you hadn't lied to me, I wouldn't have agreed to have sex. Courts are very skeptical of those claims, and they often will say very explicitly, even if this man's deceit is very unusual, we don't want to go down this path because that would jeopardize the more ordinary deceiver, the ordinary man deceiving women into sex. And I agree. I think deception to get sex is quite common, but the question is, should the law accept that, or should it at least attempt to push back at that a little bit?
Wow. Why did you write this book, Intimate Lies and the Law? It's fascinating read, but why did you decide to write it?
I think that it's a hidden body of law. It's hidden in plain sight. So there's all these cases, but people have not looked at them together. And I feel like the more people that know what's going on, the more change will be possible. And I hope that it is. I mean, the stories are, if you're a novelist looking for a plot, you can find it in my book.
Oh, you definitely can. And it's really one of these moments. I was reading some of the excerpts to some friends, and they're like, oh, it's a real aha moment. And we've all known people who've been in these situations. It's also something to read so you can be a little careful yourself when you're out there. Legally, it would be great to see some of these change, because very often the victims don't seem to have many rights, as you call it, when it involves intimates. So, fascinating book. I'm really glad that you came on. Any parting words that you'd like to tell us before I let you go?
Well, if you were deceived, you're not alone. It's not your fault. But also, if you read my book, intimate deception is definitely more fun to talk about than experience. So it's a way to see these stories without having to live through them. If you're interested, I have a website with more information.
Please.
And it's just Jill Hasday, JILLHASDAY.com.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Are you on social media as well, everywhere, or?
I'm also on Twitter, Jill Hasday.
Jill Hasday. So easy to find you, and that's HASDAY. Yep. Intimate Lies in the Law. Honestly, please pick this up. I read it cover to cover. It's a terrific book. I appreciate you coming in. I know that you're a very busy law professor. You went to Yale. You teach at the University of Minnesota, so a very well-schooled author. So thank you so much for talking about this terrific book. And thank you, everybody, for being here on Deborah Kobylt Live. You can pick up the book, I'm sure, on Amazon and anywhere else, probably on Jill, also on your website as well.
My website has links to the various places where you can buy it.
Terrific. Okay, thank you so much. Please pick it up. Intimate Lies and the Law with Jill Hasday. And thanks, everybody, for being here for Deborah Kobylt Live. You can find our show on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and also on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and just about anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Thank you again, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.